We faithfully convey value and interpret great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today, we're interpreting the book Redefining Teams, subtitled How Google Works. Google is one of the world's top tech companies, with a market value nearing $1 trillion. Its success hinges on outstanding talent management. Google employs over 90,000 people globally, many of whom are top talents in their fields. According to LinkedIn, Google is the top desired workplace globally, and Fortune magazine has ranked it America's best employer 5 times. The best employer ranking assesses talent management aspects, including employee satisfaction, respect, and turnover rates. The book's author, Laszlo Bock, holds an MBA from Yale and was Google's chief people officer, focusing on recruiting and developing talent. Under his leadership, Google was listed in best employer rankings worldwide over 100 times. In 2014, Laszlo was recognized by HR Manager magazine as one of the decade's top 10 influencers in human resources. Laszlo believes that outstanding talent management is key to Google's success. In Redefining Teams, he draws on his decade at Google to explain how Google recruits top talent and manages them to excel freely and happily. Crucially, Google's talent methods aren't just for Google. Laszlo thinks Google's secrets can be copied, whether you lead a small team or a big company. Now, I'll break down the book into 3 parts for you. Part 1, how Google recruits top talent. Part 2, how Google makes top talent effective. Part 3, how Google keeps top talent. We'll begin with Part 1, how Google recruits top talent. The advantages of top talent are clear. They drive technological innovation. For instance, Jeff Dean, who leads Google Brain, is a brilliant technologist central to Google's search algorithms. He devised a way to store indexes in memory rather than on disk, boosting search efficiency threefold. Algorithm improvements have given users a better search experience and made using Google a habit. Many companies believe that hiring ordinary talent is sufficient during recruitment. After they join the company, they invest in training to make their abilities top-notch. But Google believes this method isn't advisable. Top talent isn't trained. For example, Einstein discovered special relativity at the Swiss Patent Office, not because of any training, but because the work was light, giving him time for his own pursuits. And training's effectiveness isn't as good as companies imagine. Research shows that most companies' training doesn't deliver the expected results. For instance, a 2005 corporate survey found that less than 10% of training content is applied by employees in practice. Therefore, Google decided to invest more in recruitment, hiring only the top 10% of industry talent. However, recruiting these top talents isn't easy, mainly because most are enjoying success in their current roles and aren't job hunting. Well, for example, Carrie Meyer, Google's VP of People Development, rejected Laszlo's invitation for 4 straight years before agreeing to join under persistent persuasion. So, how does Google find and interview top industry talent? Let's start with searching for talent. Google's approach is to build its own talent pool and proactively connect with talent. In its early days, Google only hired a few hundred people annually, with applicants mainly from employee referrals and campus recruitment. Now, Google employees are top industry talents themselves, so they recommend equally excellent candidates. For campus recruitment, Google only targeted top graduates from the 8 Ivy League universities in the US. As Google grew, relying on employee referrals and Ivy League graduates could no longer meet recruitment needs. Since 2009, Google started building its own talent pool. For example, through professional social networks like LinkedIn, using alumni networks to access databases from prestigious universities. Google's internal recruitment team also analyzes the top companies in the industry, compiles their employee lists, and evaluates with Google staff who might be suitable to join. For suitable candidates, Google proactively extends invitations, builds connections, and maintains long-term tracking of their situations. For example, Google's senior VP Jeff Huber personally recruited an engineer maintaining a decade-long relationship before bringing him into Google. That's Google's talent finding approach. But identifying talent is just the first step. Interviews determine their true fit with Google. Next, let's discuss how Google interviews talent. At many companies, hiring decisions primarily rest with department managers. But Google entrusts interviews to a hiring committee composed of executives from various departments who collectively decide outcomes. Department managers lack final authority, and this prevents managers from lowering standards due to personal bias. Sometimes managers might want to hire friends or curry favor with major clients. Google's solution requires stakeholder recusal, founders included. For instance, YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki was friends with founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin pre-hiring, but her hiring was decided solely by the committee. The second benefit prevents compromise by frontline hiring departments. If frontline managers can't fill positions long-term, desperation may lead to lowered standards. For example, most companies set high standards for administrative assistant roles, but after 90 days, any applicant submitting a resume gets an interview. To ensure fair evaluations, Google standardized its interview process. Before interviewing, recruiters receive guidance emails detailing positions, required competencies, and assessment methods.
Additionally, each interview round examines different competency aspects.
Initial interviews focus on problem-solving abilities. For programmers, Google directly asks applicants to write code solving complex problems. Google also invests significant time updating question banks to prevent pre-known answers. Follow-up interviews assess responsibility and collaboration through behavioral or situational questions, comparing past achievements with Google's requirements. For example, ask the candidate to talk about a project they previously led to see if they fit Google's requirements. Situation testing simulates a work-related scenario, like asking hypothetical questions such as, what would you do if a colleague opposes your proposal? Finally, the hiring committee submits candidates who pass the interviews to executives for review, focusing on cultural fit, like whether they embrace Google's open and transparent culture. That concludes part one. Google focuses its main efforts on finding and screening talent. First, it builds its own talent pool to track top industry talent long-term. Second, Google gives hiring authority to the hiring committee, not frontline department managers. To evaluate candidates fairly, Google also uses a standardized interview process with multiple rounds to assess candidates' overall abilities. Once top talent is hired, how to make them effective. That's part two, which we'll cover next. I'll explain it in three aspects. The first is giving top talent ample freedom. Google believes that for top talent, you can't treat them like assembly line workers, dictating every do and don't. Google's approach is to give talent full freedom to explore cutting-edge areas. For instance, Google implements the 20% time rule internally, where employees can spend 20% of their time on projects they find viable. Google also strongly supports employees' 20% projects. Google's Street View tricycle was developed by an engineer using 20% time. Google Street View is built on Google Maps, allowing people to see street-level views when accessing maps. Google's tool for capturing streets is the Street View car. However, Street View cars can't access some narrow streets. A Google engineer discovered this problem while on vacation in Spain. After the vacation, he used 20% time to design a Street View tricycle for capturing narrow street scenes. Later, the tricycle was adapted into a ski vehicle to film skiing events at the Vancouver Winter Olympics. All this received strong support from Google. For core work, Google also gives employees ample freedom, reflected in how company goals are set. Google uses the OKR performance management method. OKR stands for Objectives and Key Results, which translates to goals and key results in Chinese. The single quotation mark, objectives, must be specific, measurable, and verifiable. If you achieve all the key results, KRs, you'll accomplish the objective. For example, an objective could be improving search quality by 10%, with key results like better search relevance, how useful results are to users, and shorter wait times, how quickly users find results. As long as these two key results are achieved, the objective is completed. OKRs help employees clarify what's important versus unimportant for achieving goals. And more importantly, at Google, OKR setting is bottom up, giving employees freedom and motivating their ownership spirit. Each quarter, Google co-founder Larry Page sets the company's direction, then encourages employees to autonomously set their own objectives and key results, which determine team goals. Key frog, SPF 1, 2. Thus, frontline employees understand their work's purpose and proactively identify and solve cutting-edge problems. Here's an analogy. A doctor tells you to lower blood pressure to run a marathon. You might reluctantly accept this advice, but if you personally want to run the race, you'll actively follow the doctor's recommendations. Moreover, Google's OKRs are transparent. Everyone's goals from CEO to entry-level employees are public. This helps employees connect personal goals with company plans and engage more deeply. And collaborate closely with other teams. When setting goals, Google encourages employees to think big. Co-founder Larry Page said, "When you set a crazy, ambitious goal, even if you miss it, you'll still achieve something remarkable. But there should be limits to the craziness." Google has two measures, ensuring goals are both challenging and reasonable. The first measure is the 70% rule, meaning if you achieve 70% of a goal, it was set appropriately. And, for example, if an OKR aims to reduce search response time by 10 milliseconds and you achieve 7 milliseconds, exactly 70%, the goal was perfect. If you easily hit 10 milliseconds, it was too low. This rule also applies to company strategy. Google allocates 70% of its resources to existing profitable products. For example, core businesses like search engines and ads. The remaining 30% goes into more ambitious goals. However, for ambitious goals to get additional company investment, they must first pass the resource scarcity test. The test criterion is that the product must succeed without any company marketing support. For instance, Google Chrome browser, launched in 2008, received zero marketing funds. It gained users purely through superior performance. Only when users surpassed 70 million did Google increase investment, using marketing to boost the product and ensure employees set reasonable goals. The second measure is rewarding those who fail. To encourage risk-taking, the company must provide a safety net, meaning covering for failures. For example, Google once had a product called Google Wave, which integrated email, text collaboration, and video chat. It's like you can send an email to a colleague while in a video meeting.
Then collaboratively edit a document online, all achievable just with Google Wave.
Yet it was a wild idea. No social product has ever integrated so many features.
But after a year, Google shut it down because user numbers fell short. Though the product failed, no Wave team member was fired. Most were reassigned, as their project dared to tackle crazy goals. This failure also yielded valuable outcomes. For instance, some tech in Google and Gmail was adapted from Wave. That concludes the first aspect of empowering top talent, giving them ample freedom. Next, we'll cover the second aspect, ensuring fair performance evaluations. Fair evaluations let high-achieving employees get deserved rewards, while unfair ones drastically lower motivation. At Google, performance isn't decided by direct supervisors alone. After managers give initial ratings, Google organizes reviews to calibrate assessments. Laszlo believes it's the calibration process that makes Google employees twice as satisfied with evaluations as those at other companies. But during calibration meetings, managers from similar business teams review employee performance together. For example, 5 sales managers from different products jointly review performance of their 100 employees. Because each manager has different expectations and interpretations of performance standards. Just like in school, where some teachers grade strictly while others leniently, the review process eliminates such discrepancies. To prevent collective poor decisions, Google provides materials before each calibration meeting describing common evaluator errors, with the top 5 being recency bias, where evaluators overweight recent performance. If an employee impressed an evaluator in a meeting this week, the evaluator might inflate their rating during calibration. In calibration meetings, you often hear evaluators remind each other, wait, that's recency bias. We need to review performance across the entire period, not just last week's performance. Having covered fair evaluation, let's discuss the third aspect of empowering top talent, supporting low performers. After evaluations, some employees inevitably underperform.
Many companies fire bottom performers, but Laszlo sees problems with this approach.
Because if employees know from day one that someone will be fired for poor ratings regardless of team excellence, employees focus on internal competition rather than competing with other companies. And low-ranked employees live in constant fear and failure anxiety.
How can they focus when constantly fearing termination?
Google trusts its strict hiring process. All hires are top talent. Performance issues are temporary, maybe due to methods or environment. So before termination, Google first helps employees overcome challenges. The first method is providing training and coaching to improve their approaches. Note that this is different from hiring employees and then training them. But at this stage, Google's training targets only a small group of struggling employees, not everyone. Supporting bottom performers. The second method is to change job positions for bottom performers. If training doesn't work, Google helps bottom performers switch positions within the company. Usually after transferring positions, the person's performance improves to an average level. If changing the environment still doesn't boost performance, Google will then fire them. But this doesn't mean the employee is bad. They just might not be suited for working at Google. For example, Laszlo once fired an employee under him. 3 years later, that employee became the chief human resources officer of a Fortune 500 company with a thriving career. He said the new company's pace is a bit slower than Google's, but it suits him perfectly. Google's approach has gradually gained recognition from peers. In November 2013, Microsoft announced the cancellation of mandatory rank and yank policies.
Because before that, Microsoft's performance culture made employees focus on comparing themselves to colleagues, causing Microsoft to miss opportunities in the mobile internet era.
That concludes part 2. We covered 3 aspects of how Google empowers top talent. The first aspect is giving top talent ample freedom, including the 20% time rule and OKR methodology. The second aspect is ensuring fair evaluations so that high-achieving employees get deserved rewards. The methods are calibrating performance and avoiding subjective biases. The third aspect is supporting bottom performers. For bottom performers, Google doesn't fire them directly, but collaborates to find solutions like targeted training or position changes. Finally, we enter part 3. How does Google retain top talent? Many know Google offers perks like free meals and shuttle buses to retain talent, but more importantly, it's about making them happy at work. Here, we'll mainly introduce Google's measures in 2 areas. The first area is developing managers who satisfy employees. Sometimes employees aren't dissatisfied with the company, but with bad managers. Developing managers who satisfy employees is key to retaining top talent and reducing turnover. In 2010, Laszlo conducted a transfer experiment. He moved 60 top-performing employees to teams with the worst managers. The next year, these employees not only saw significant performance drops, but also considered quitting. This shows top talent won't work under poor managers. So how to develop satisfying managers? Google's approach has 3 steps. First, set manager evaluation criteria entirely decided by employees. In 2008, Google launched a survey method called the Google Employee Happiness Index. It identified Google employees' top concerns, including manager-related issues. Based on this, HR compiled employees' top 10 expectations for managers as evaluation criteria. For example, being a good mentor, empowering teams, avoiding micromanagement, and caring about achievements. The second step, rate managers through employees sampling interviews with predefined questions. Some questions came from the 10 expectations. Employees provided feedback based on managers' interview performance. Third step, improve manager satisfaction. Laszlo compared ratings and feedback against Google's best managers to identify those needing improvement and provide help. Similarly, identifying mediocre managers allowed targeted improvement assistance. For example, managers scoring low in communication could receive active listening training. After 2 years, employee satisfaction with managers steadily increased. By 2012, average manager satisfaction rose from 83% to 88%, with even the worst improving from 70% to 77%. But that's next. The second aspect of retaining top talent: differentiated compensation systems. Most companies enforce rigid pay structures with caps. For example, salaries fluctuate around market rates. Top performers get plus 30%, average get approximately 3% raises, exceptional get 10%. But caps cause talent drain. Imagine you're a top salesperson with outstanding performance, making huge contributions to the company. Year 1, you might get a 10% raise, but only 7% in year 2, then 5%. Soon you hit your pay grade cap with no more increases. Timely promotions create brief salary space, but you quickly hit the next cap. For top performers, the smart move is job hopping. Since star talent commands premium value, many firms offer double salaries to attract them. Google combats this with differentiated compensation, mainly through 2 approaches. First, a differentiated salary structure.
At Google, individual pay depends entirely on the value their work generates.
Employees doing identical jobs may earn different salaries. Since value creation varies, pay gaps can easily reach 3 to 5 times. Google even reserves salary bandwidth for exceptional performers. Pay differences for the same role can exceed 100 times.
At Google, lower-level employees sometimes out-earn higher-level ones by significant margins.
Second, unequal bonuses. At many companies, top contributors don't get proportional bonuses. With too many profit sharers, bonuses get diluted across all employees. Google believes exceptional contributors deserve generosity, hence its unequal bonus system. If top performers create 10 times more value than average, they should get at least 5 times bonus. To stay within budget, average performers receive less. For example, throughout 2005, Google awarded over $45 million to 11 teams, while others got minimal bonuses. Implementing this extreme compensation requires 3 capabilities. First, distinguishing employee-created value from environmental factors like market surges or Google's brand effect. Second, the evaluation fairness we previously discussed.
Fair evaluations make employees who don't get high salaries or bonuses accept the outcome willingly.
Finally, managers must fully understand compensation policies to clearly explain Google's bonus system and guide employees on earning higher bonuses. Otherwise, it breeds jealousy and resentment.
That concludes part 3. Beyond perks, Google makes 2 key efforts to retain top talent. First, developing managers who satisfy employees. Second, implementing differentiated compensation systems. This concludes our interpretation of work rules.
Author Laszlo Bock served as Google's chief people officer for a decade, revealing Google's talent strategy from an HR perspective.
Let's briefly recap. Google believes in hiring top talent directly rather than settling for average candidates. To achieve this, they built talent pools for continuous tracking and standardized interview strategies.
Second, to empower top talent. First, grant ample freedom.
Next, ensure evaluation fairness. Then, support low performers. Third, for retention, develop satisfying managers and implement differentiated compensation. Today, talent has become a crucial corporate battlefield. At Google, people are always treated as vital assets, with leadership prioritizing talent discovery, development, and retention as core strategy, the foundation of Google's success. Well, that's work rules. We conclude our interpretation here. Reading notes are below. See you tomorrow.